Order. Personnel Committee meeting to order, July 18th. Courtesy of the floor. Anyone? Courtesy of the floor. Seeing none, we have a few appointments tonight that I'm happy to bring to you. The first one is an appointment for County Exec Lamont McClure is being considered for the position to finish Michael Dowd's term to begin July 20th, 2018, and to end December 31st, 2021. And we will be looking for a motion to move.
Motion.
Okay, sure. And also the one for Lori Vargo Hefner for the same term, July 20th, 2018, December 31st.
This one says till the 2020. His says
So
2021.
21.
Is that a typo, or is that what it's supposed to be? Okay,
But we can
just
still do them together? Okay, great.
I make a
Okay.
motion for putting them together for tomorrow
Okay,
night.
motion. And a second?
I'll second.
Okay, second. All right, so moved. Next, we have an appointment of Richard H. Johnston to the position of sheriff. Submitting the name, Richard Johnson, for appointment to the position of sheriff at the pay grade Group 5, Step 2B, at $89,235, effective upon date of County Council resolution approval. And the resume is attached.
Mr. Johnson is here if anybody wants to ask him questions or.
Please.
Yes, he is here if you have any questions for him, and I'm really pleased that at the end of following the administrative code process, we arrived at Mr. Johnston, Acting Sheriff Johnston. We had many fine candidates to interview, and ultimately what I was most persuaded by, in addition to the fact that Mr. Johnson has risen up through the ranks of the Northampton County Sheriff's Department. He was a deputy sheriff. He was a sergeant in our department. He's now a lieutenant in our department, and for the last 6 months, he's been the acting sheriff of our department. And I think one of the things that most commends his appointment to you, and I suggest that you should confirm him, is that over the last 6 months, you have not heard anything about the sheriff's department in Northampton County. And sometimes that is a very good thing, because what it means is our prisoners were safely transported. The civil suits that were filed were served on the people they should be served on. Evictions and forfeit and the things that they do all went very smoothly. The courthouse security was not breached. He's done an excellent job in this, what I think of as a trial run in the first 6 months. And how often do you get a chance to have a candidate who's before you who's actually done the job for 6 months and done it so well that you didn't ask me one question about the sheriff's department other than when am I going to have a sheriff? So with that, I introduce Mr. Johnston to you, and he's here to field any questions you might have for him.
You're welcome. Good afternoon, Council.
Afternoon. Anybody have any questions? Your resume is pretty impressive. I'd like to tell you that right off the bat. Mr. Kusick has a question.
Yeah, I would agree. I think you're extremely well qualified. I look forward to voting for you. Mr. McClure forgot to mention that the egg hunt went off without a hitch as well. So the only question or issue maybe I had was that over the last few years, your predecessor moved from a force that was maybe predominantly or significantly part-time. And there's been a shift to more full-time deputies. Could you maybe describe what you've seen as that process has moved ahead, and has overtime been an issue as we've moved to more full-timers?
Actually, overtime hasn't been an issue. One of the benefits of the part-timers is that we can move more prisoners. If you have 18 people, you can only move 18 prisoners. So if you have 36 part-timers, you can move 36. But because of our prisoner transportations, we can't, with part-timers and their availability, it kind of limits us. The state has certain days for male inmates to go to prison, certain dates for female. And when I say that, that's their classifications in the state. But then we have prisoners come in through the state system, and they have to be picked up at a different prison now. So it's kind of having the full-timers, we could say, no, you got to be here. We can kind of make them come to work and get that job done. I would love to have more part-timers to help the courts out, but then when it comes into certain part-time deputies of police officers and their departments don't want them out on the road. They're okay if they're here doing security functions, but they're worried about the liability, on their end as well as ours and things like that. So, I mean, the part-timers, most of them, they do a great job. I can't say most of them. They all do a great job, and they're very good for us. But I think my predecessor thought it was easier having full-time people that you can control them and them being available for work. Where you get into part-timers, vacations come around or something like that, you can't, where we can limit the amount of people off. With a part-timer, you can't really limit it as much.
Yeah. So do you anticipate changing the mix of part-time to full-time, or maybe some additional part-time?
Right now, we're looking to just keep what we have, and should there be changes, but I don't see any right now. I think the amount of positions that we were allotted covers the amount of work. Our only issue now is we have a couple people on long-term sick, so we're missing them, but otherwise we're still managing to get the job done.
Okay. And my last question is, will you be looking, assuming you're confirmed, will you be looking to fill your position, and how will you go about that?
I would be looking to fill my position. We have a competitive process on that. Last time around it was a board with people from law enforcement, and they ranked everybody, and it got moved into place that way. I would be looking to do the same amount. I mean, it's depending on the amount of applicants that are putting in there. Obviously, if we only have one and we know that person, I don't know if we really need to go through because if we don't select them, what are we going to do? We're going to go to the outside. And the way that the job description is made, that you have to have so many years to become a sergeant in our department, and so many years as a sergeant to become a lieutenant. So, and it's good that it limits it. That now we're not bringing somebody from the outside with ideas that would be disruptive or interrupt the historical nature of our business.
Well, I look forward to voting for you tomorrow night. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'd just like to say that I fully support your candidacy for this, and I will be voting for you also tomorrow night.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
Motion to approve?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, sure.
Passing
Let's have a motion to approve them.
Second.
Second? Okay, great.
Thank you. Have a good
Thank
evening.
you.
Leads right into that. So moved. Tomorrow night. Next on the agenda, we have personnel request from Suzanne Wondolowski, Director of Human Services. Please consider the following requests to create 13 new positions. Create the following 11 positions classified 11.0 FTE for full-time. 1 clerk typist 3, 1.0 pay grade HS 30, 1 social service aide 3, 1.0 FTE pay grade PS 29B, 1 attorney 2, 1 FTE pay grade HS 45B, 1 accountant, 1 FTE pay grade HS 35, 1 caseworker 3, 1 FTE pay grade PS 37A, and 2 caseworker supervisors, 2.0 FTE pay grade HS 38B, and 6 caseworker 2s, 6.0 FTE pay grade PS 35. Also, to eliminate the following classifications: 1.0 FTE, 1 clerk typist 2, 1.0 FTE pay grade PS 27, 1 social service aide 2, 1.0 FTE pay grade PS 27. Attached Please find the calculations of the financial impact of this request and a memorandum from the Department of Human Services stating the reason for the request. Any questions on this? Do you want a little time to look everything over? And also, Ms. Wondolowski, would you like to address any of this at this time? Mr.
Just,
Whitmore?
if I may, Mr. Chairman, just very quickly, the history of county executives in Northampton County is, you could serve 2 terms or 1, and if I'm a 1-term county executive, I am not going to miss an opportunity to protect the children, and this opportunity presents us with the ability to be able to create a situation in human services and children and youth where we in Northampton County will be able to look in the mirror and say, even when things go awry, and they will, we can't protect everyone all the time, that we did everything we possibly could, and we didn't leave anything to chance. And this is especially important when you consider that the state reimburses these positions at 90% and 80%, and I believe Sue and maybe Kevin will have some more for you on that. Thank
Great.
you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. Brought my water up since there's a lot of positions. I thought you might have a lot of questions. I went through this in great detail to try to figure out the most logical order. So if you all don't want to start with questions, I can take it through what makes sense to me.
That would be great.
A step at a time.
If you don't mind.
Absolutely. So, bear with me. I'm going to start with the intake units, where we are asking for 1 supervisor, 4 caseworkers, and an attorney. So, just to give you a little bit of data, first of all, these are the 11 positions that I've mentioned the last month or two at council that the state has already approved. They're all, I think they're all at the 80-20 reimbursement rate. One of them might be 90-10, but as Mr. McClure said, they're at least 80-20. So for the first 6 months of this calendar year, Children and Youth has received 3,838 referrals, which is up 215 referrals from the same period in 2017. And from July 1st to July 17th, we had 196 referrals. So I just wanted to give you a sense of the volume, because I know we've talked about that over time too, how the volume, starting 3 or 4 years ago really went through the roof. One of the other pieces of data that I knew about but was shocked to see the actual numbers, the folks in Children and Youth gave me some data about the overtime hours. So this is from pay period January 16th of this year to June 2nd. Just overtime that caseworkers spent only completing paperwork was 514 hours. The overtime that they spent on home visits, emergency placements, and anything else after hours is already, as of June 2nd, 2,512 hours. It's a massive amount of overtime. And we talk about retention. I mean, we're, wearing people out, to say the least. So when Kevin managed to do one of the things he does best, which is get new positions from the state, they met with their group of folks from the Centers for Excellence, I believe, to help navigate and help choose where we needed the positions the most. So that's where you, have the breakdown in front of you. So to me, those statistics alone speak to the need for the staff. But in addition to that, in our needs-based budget guidelines this year, the state is going to be making a change. The ratio of staff to supervisors is currently about 5 to 1. They're going to be making the change in the near future to 4 staff to 1 supervisor. So when you do the math with the numbers that we currently have, eventually we're going to need even more supervisors too, which you'll hear about in a year. There was one other piece of information related to that. So the average, I was asking about average caseload sizes. Ideally, what Kevin would like is to see about 9 cases per caseworker, and the state is in that ballpark and what they would like to see as well. Our current ongoing caseworkers average between 15 and 17 cases per caseworker. So, go ahead.
Case is child or
Yes.
family?
Child. Okay. So, the first set of positions will be our intake, in our intake units. So that those are going to be the folks who are dealing with the those initial referrals and assessing them and determining whether or not there's abuse, neglect, whether we can close families, whether they need services, whether they need ongoing services. So that is four caseworkers, excuse me, and 1 supervisor. The attorney, I have a whole list of justifications for as well. With the volume of work that we are doing and the staff that we are adding, it goes without saying that we need additional fiscal oversight and legal oversight. Mara McGuire has been an incredible asset to us with taking over as the managing attorney, and I wish I could clone her a few times over, but that's not the case, and it's a running joke downstairs. I say downstairs, I'm on the 3rd floor, they're on the 2nd. They are now keeping track of how many times Mara is followed into the restroom, and they are literally, by a caseworker who is discussing a potential case that they have. It's a high number. It also, some days, takes her 2 hours to get from her car to her office, because that's how, and I've been there. Kevin and I, when we interviewed the latest attorney we hired, it's rapid fire. It's whatever folks envision children and youth being with legal work, it is just one thing after the next after the next. Sometimes Mara hears about things walking down the hall that no one was even telling her, that she's like, wait a minute. So that's part of the justification for the attorney.
Yes, please.
How many attorneys, if we add this one, how many full-time attorneys are in the department right now?
So we have Mara, who's the managing attorney. We are currently filling her previous position of attorney. We recently hired another full-time contract attorney, and we have Dan is another full-time attorney, and we have 2 part-time attorneys.
So with this, you'd have 5 full-time and 2 part-time?
There will, it would be Mara, Mara's, let me think this out, Mara's vacant position, and the new position plus Dan. So there would be 4 full-timers.
Okay.
We sort of anticipate our contracted attorney filling one of the full-time vacancies at some point.
All right. I was just curious.
So it would be 4 full-time attorneys we would have.
And I might as well ask my follow-up now.
Sure.
I know we don't have much of the year left, but let's say until you get these filled, and I know how that works.
Yes.
Are you able, it's in your current budget, you can cover any of these costs for the rest of this year?
Yes. That was
Okay.
part of why we, until we got this position approved by the state for this attorney, that's why we hired a contract attorney, because we had the money in the budget to do it, and obviously more than a desperate need to have somebody immediately, as opposed to going through the process. So now we'll have this one as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. In terms of, okay, I know the argument has been made in the past, you have vacancies, how will these other positions help you? So to answer that before it's asked, we have a few factors. We all know how long it takes civil service, number one. So in terms of hiring somebody, it probably takes at least 2 to 3 months. That's a good amount of time. I mean, that's like a positive. I've mentioned before, you have folks who we promote internally from caseworkers to supervisors, which happens regularly. When that happens, those folks have a 3-month right to return. So that position has to stay vacant for 3 full months before we can fill that one. Once we hire somebody within 2 to 3 months, it's another 6 months before they are trained in with the I think it's the Seawell program, and having done their on-the-job training and all of that, it's at least 6 to 9 months before they carry a full caseload. Then, of course, we have the folks who we have working 3,000 hours of overtime in 6 months, and they say, I think I'm going to go upstairs and work in mental health and drug and alcohol. And so we don't have, we have vacancies now, but even with the addition of these, it will help us keep a more stable atmosphere with more manageable caseload sizes on a regular basis, because even when folks are leaving to go upstairs or whatnot, there will be, with a larger number of positions, we will just have greater stability and less burnout, hopefully.
May I ask another question?
Sure.
I always look at Ken before I ask a question. The thing is, no, I was just wondering if it's still a problem with the supervisory staff. When you bring in the supervisor, generally you're bringing them in, I guess it depends on their experience, but usually it would be like at one of the lower first steps or second step. Has it been a problem, or is it a continuing problem where the pay of a starting supervisor,
Yes.
they come in and they say, wow, I'm getting paid a lot less than a caseworker,
Well,
and that runs into a problem? I mean, I'm just curious.
We haven't had it
was an issue. I don't know if it still is.
Well, it is an issue. It has not caused us to lose supervisors.
Okay.
We had one supervisor a couple years ago who, after the law changed, well, she went from a caseworker to supervisor. After the law changed, it was out of control. She said, I don't want this responsibility. This is out of control. This is too much. And so she did her right to return. But generally, it's not a problem for people, either returning to the caseworker or not taking it. However, I think generally speaking, they get paid about $1,000 more salary. They don't get overtime.
Well, what I
So-
was wondering was, and I think if it's above a certain scale, if somebody's hired or changed position, you have to get approval. I think it's something worth considering. I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I know this has been a problem, and Mr. Dolan's nodding his head. This is a problem. Lord knows we were trying to come up with all kinds of ways to figure this out, but I mean, understanding how big a problem it is, I think if in fact it stays a problem or gets worse, it's something to consider, saying, look, if we're going to make this work and keep people, we're going to have to bring them in at X amount. I mean, it's just a fact of life. I'm just throwing that out there.
I wouldn't argue with that.
I know. I understand.
You're welcome. Other questions before I move to the next set? And much of this information now I won't obviously have to repeat, so it'll go a little quicker, hopefully.
I just have a comment.
Sure.
I think it's important that just based on what you just explained to us, that this needs to get in any gear.
Right.
It should have maybe gotten. I get it.
Yeah.
You got to get it in there to smooth it out. To
Yes.
at least
bring
Okay.
some stability to right the
Okay.
ship a bit.
Yeah.
Well, look, we're always going to have vacancies. I mean, that's just the nature of what we do and how the job flows there. It's about keeping those to a smaller number and then having, only having that small number of vacancies so that the rest of the folks.
Sure.
Anyway, okay. I will move on to the accountant 1 and the county caseworker 3, and ultimately we have really just started at Children and Youth to get into doing risk assessments and on-site reviews and audits at our private providers, which the purpose obviously is focusing on quality of services. We have an awful lot of vendors that we contract with, and this is part of how and an important piece of how we monitor their compliance and the level of care that they're providing to our youth and families. So with the increase in volume of youth, that is naturally, it just trickles down to needing some positions everywhere, really. But it's those risk assessments and on-site reviews that the accountants do. That's created the need for another accountant. This one overlaps with sort of the next section, but the county caseworker 3 is assigned to quality assurance. And we would like the accountant to be able to focus on the fiscal things while the county caseworker 3 can focus on those quality assurance pieces. So tying into, this is where it starts to get a little tricky. So stop me, interrupt me. Currently, we have a program specialist, one who does quality assurance, but she also oversees the agency's, we call it Transportation Department. It's our 6 social service aides. And so in addition to trying to be our, the state comes in for our yearly audits, and her job is to ensure the integrity of files on hundreds and hundreds of kids. She also has to supervise 6 social service aides, which is fine, except the volume of children that we're serving and families, it's constantly, my family needs a ride, my family needs a ride. So we would like to be able to split that task off. So we would like the caseworker 3 to be able to focus on the assisting with the quality assurance, which is what that position was originally designed for, with the program specialist, and the social service, one of the social service aides to go from a 2 to a 3, so that they can help oversee and the scheduling of all of those crazy transportation requests. Questions about that? Okay. I thought if I talked long enough and confused you enough, that would maybe work for me. Okay, we're nearing the end. The next one is in our ongoing unit, 1 county caseworker supervisor and 2 casework 2 positions. So we've already talked about the volume of referrals that have come in, which has necessitated the need for another intake unit. So when we open those cases, they have to go somewhere. They go to our ongoing unit. So the ongoing unit are the folks who have the 15 to 17 caseload that we need to get down to, definitely down to 10, if not 9. So that is what will assist with getting those numbers back on track. I already did the social service aid 2 to a 3. So the other one is we are looking to upgrade one of our clerk typist 2s to a clerk typist 3. If I'm not mistaken, we have 6 clerk typists in children and youth. We have a total of 136 staff in children and youth alone. That's what we have now. So we have 1 confidential secretary to deal with all of the personnel issues. We all know, Mr. Heckman, the moving parts of children and youth and how many times we are shifting, moving, hiring, transferring, promoting. The personnel work is endless, and with only 1 clerk 3 who can handle that, she is able to, she needs assistance to manage it, but there also has to be someone else who is allowed to participate in that part of the process, as opposed to it falling, as it does now, all of the overflow falls on my secretary, Georgine, who is amazing, but there are not enough hours in the day for her to do all of children and youth's personnel work as well. That will take it from a union to a non-union position. We did discuss it with the chief shop steward, who was obviously initially not happy about that, but we did tell her we are adding all of the with approval, we're adding all of the caseworker positions, which will, of course, be union positions, and paid at a higher rate than the clerk typist 2. Anyway, those are the children and youth positions. I appreciate your patience. Are there any questions?
Yes, we have a question here.
Go ahead.
If there's so much clerical work that needs to be done, why are you eliminating the 1 clerk typist? 2.
We're upgrading the clerk 2 to a 3 to assist with the clerk 2s can manage the scanning. I mean, they do like true clerical work, scanning and that kind of a thing. They can manage that. It's the confidential personnel.
So you need more of one than
No,
the other?
Yes, we
More
only
of
have
the 3.
Yes,
than
we
the
only
2.
have 1 3.
Okay.
We would like to have 2 3s to manage the volume of personnel work that only a clerk 3 is allowed to process.
So are you swapping that out as a budgetary thing, or
We're just
you just don't need another 2?
No, so we don't need another 2, we're just upgrading it. Essentially, whoever becomes the clerk 3 will still do some clerk 2 duties, as does our clerk 3 now, but they will also be able to add to their repertoire the 3 duties, and we feel like we can distribute the remainder of the work
Will you be promoting internally from the clerk 2 position to
Yes,
the 3?
that ideally, yes.
So you're not eliminating any one single
No.
person's position?
Correct.
Okay, just checking.
Correct.
Good question.
Personally, I've heard enough.
That was my goal.
You've been over this for months and months and months. We know the condition. We know it's an 80-20 pass-through. It's wonderful. You have the money in your budget. We understand why you need all the positions. So I'd like to make a motion that we move this forward to tomorrow night.
I'd like to second Mr. Kraus' magnanimous motion.
Okay, motion and a second. So moved. Thank you very much for the work that you do, and
Thank you.
and keep up staying ahead of the curve.
Thank you.
We're trying.
Okay.
Thank you.
Now you get to stay, because there's another one.
Good job.
There is
It's
one more.
briefer.
isn't there? Yeah. Okay, that leads us down to the next request from the Director of Human Services. Please consider the following request for the hire of a Director of Nursing full-time at a competitive rate of pay. This will not require the creation of a new position, but will require approval of a higher rate on the pay scale to pay at a competitive rate to hire a well-trained, well-qualified candidate. The enclosed calculation shows the difference in cost between the rate of pay for the most recent holder of the Director of Nursing position to the proposed rate of pay. Please see the attached. Any questions? No. Okay.
I have a question. In this request form, it mentions that the incumbent salary was $84,876. My recollection is that the incumbent salary was, I believe it was $96,500.
The incumbent salary on that was our DON who was here for 7 days.
Oh.
Oh.
Not the one from 2017.
Okay.
Did she make a whole 7 days, or did she like 3 and then disappear?
No comment.
Well, so then I guess my question is, the one who was let go back in January, the salary was 96.
Right.
Why was that the incumbent offered 84? First question. And second one, why now are we offering 101, which is
Yes.
significantly higher than the last two previous ones?
Sure. When we hired the one most recently, a few months ago, I was not aware of what the salary had been approved for the DON from 2017, and she agreed to the salary that we offered her, so we did not pursue a higher salary. I think what we learned is, in order to get someone who is truly qualified, we would definitely have to pay the salary that you, I think you, Mr. Cusick, were the one who told me. It was 96 and change. So when we met with Dawn, who is the potential candidate, she's currently making over about 160,000, and she was unable to accept 96. So in conversation, she said that she would be willing to accept the position for one step higher. So I consulted with Liz Kelly, and we did some research. And it turns out that Cedar Brook, which as we know is a smaller facility, pays their DON $107,000. And given Ms. Torres Feldman's 2 master's degrees and job experience, and the fact that she would like to retire from Graysdale, if approved by you all, I believe that she was worth the extra $4,000 or $5,000. Did that answer?
Well, I mean, again, I realize that the salary, that the 84,000 was just ridiculously low. But can we see the resume of the person that you want to? I mean, I don't even want to see the name. I just would like to know if you would even just go through the qualifications, I'd be satisfied. The experience and education, if you want to just go through it,
I don't have it right in front of me, although I certainly can get it for you before tomorrow. But
yeah, again, I don't mind paying
I have some
somebody.
of it. No, I have some of it.
Okay.
I can give you I just don't have all of the details. She has both her MSN and MBA degrees, and has she's worked at Easton Hospital and one other place where she lives now, and worked her way up the ranks, and has been in management and administration for quite some time, and has served as both vice president and chief nursing officer in the hospitals where she was, the most recent hospital. And it was a job that is, I don't want to say equivalent, but just about the equivalent of what a DON would be in a nursing home. If you want more detail, if I have permission, I don't.
We also,
Yeah.
this was, I think the salary was mentioned before
Yes.
at another meeting, and I think we all had kind of agreed that
Mm-hmm.
we're not getting to be able to retain somebody that's going to lead the ship here, and it's so important to drive this ship in the right direction. But, so you can get that information for Mr. Cusick. Right.
In a step that we wouldn't be able to offer otherwise, so we'll get you there.
Yep. Okay.
I don't mind paying someone who's well qualified.
Understood.
Sure.
That's
I learned plenty of lessons after the last go around, and I make no guarantees, of course, but just so you know, while one thing I'll say while Liz sees if she can get that, when I first spoke with Dawn, she asked if a tour of Graysdale would be part of her interview process. I said, well, that is a really great idea. And so we did that, and she was able to meet some of the administration and some of the administrative nursing staff, and we toured her on a couple of the floors, and honestly, it was night and day for me, and so I feel she's well qualified. I think her resume will speak for itself when you get it.
Okay.
Fair question.
All right. Any other questions?
I don't want to belabor the point because I'm going to make a motion to move this on. But the thing is, I'm not concerned. What you said about her resume sounds fine, and I agree. We need stability out there in this position. I'm just sort of curious. She was making about 160. She's willing to come here for 101. Are you feel confident that she's going to be okay with that?
That's probably the best question yet. She and her husband relocated, I don't recall where, about 3 hours away a few years ago for job opportunities. Their family is all from the Easton Nazareth area. They are looking to move back. I am confident, based on what I know about her husband and the family dynamic, that she will be able to financially deal with the $101,000. I believe she genuinely does not want to interview again. She said she had not interviewed for a new job for 20 years, and she truly wanted to retire.
You retire from Graysdale after a period of time.
Amen.
Okay, I just wanted to nail that down. At least
She has that 5 years in.
That's right. Pension.
Well, no,
We sold the pension.
if that's her goal,
She's
fine.
not. She's not 95. So
I'd like to make a motion
I'll
that we
second your
move this
motion.
on to
Okay, we
tomorrow
have-
night.
Motion from Mr. Heckman, second from Mr. Kraft. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moved to tomorrow night, and we will get a resume for Mr. Cusick and for everyone else.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we have one more here. Personnel request for
We have another one?
administration of weights and measures. At the request of Charles Derninger, Director of Administration, please consider the following request for the elimination of one deputy sealer weights and measures part-time, and the creation of
I
one
like this one.
deputy sealer weights and measures full-time. Elimination of one deputy sealer weights and measures, 0.5 FTE. Deputy sealer weights and measures, part-time, 0.5 WFTE, pay grade RUGR 14, and create one deputy sealer weights and measures, full-time. Deputy seals and weights and measures, from full-time pay grade RUGR 14. Please find a calculation of the financial impact of the above request. And do we have any questions, and you want
May I
to
be-
address the
may I
council?
be recognized?
Please, yes.
So, Mr. Dertinger's first presentation to you this afternoon on this issue would be relatively benign. It's basically a staffing request to you that you've seen many, many times. But in keeping with our theme of protection, we talked a little bit about protecting children and the importance of that. Now we're talking about protecting consumers. So recently, as you know, we had a gas station in Wind Gap that was selling gas that had water in it, and many folks were unfortunately adversely affected by that because apparently water in your gas tank is not helpful in moving your car down the road. So our Weights and Measures Department, immediately upon complaint, went, investigated, and closed that gas station to further protect consumers. The county did a terrific job communicating through its social media that it was closed, why it was closed. And then after the state came in and the tanks checked out, our Weights and Measures folks went back and they opened it up, and we let folks know that they had taken corrective action. It was open. We're protecting consumers. And I think you'll hear Mr. Dertinger's presentation now on the jobs, and then you'll hear during finance a little bit more about the really a fantastic opportunity Northampton County has, not only to protect consumers in Northampton County, but across the Lehigh Valley, and maybe get a little money besides. So with that, I'll let you know that Mr. Dertinger, as you know, has been doing a lot of great work on big stuff, like the P3, for example. But if you look in the charter and the administrative code, you see the Director of Administration has actual, real jobs that he doesn't inherit from wrong-headed previous administrations. And one of those is running Weights and Measures. And he's doing a fabulous job doing that, too. And I really think this, when you get finished today through over 2 committee meetings hearing about these ideas, I think you'll think that he's doing a good job helping us protect consumers as well. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Dertinger.
Good evening. Effectively, this is just correcting something that never really made sense. There's a lot of windshield time for the members of the Department of Weights and Measures. They're located centrally in the county, and anywhere they have to go off a good distance. If we have a part-time person working with them, they then have to drive back to bring that person back so they can go home. It doesn't make sense to have someone there in a part-time position. It's also very hard to fill a part-time position for someone to be working with them. Even in these circumstances where, now the Department of Weights and Measures doesn't just make sure that you're getting a gallon of gas, they make sure that you're getting a pound of whatever it is that you're buying, bologna from Mr. Kraft. They also make sure that when you bring something to checkout, that the price there is what the scanner shows as well. So there are a lot of moving parts, not the least of which your home heating oil. There's making sure that all these manufacturing facilities are using things that are properly measured, making sure that their scales, their measuring devices, their timing devices, making sure that while you're parking in Easton, if you put in your money for an hour, you get an hour. They check and make sure that all of these things are going well. And there's a lot to be done there. And as Mr. McClure alluded to, a lot to be done moving forward with your approval. But this is a position that never made sense as a part-time job. It was impacting us negatively, as we had people who would otherwise be protecting consumers and ensuring that our weights and measures are correct, spending time behind the windshield rather than actually doing their job. So moving this forward, not the least of which, and the most important part, which we'll cover again later, this is a series of positions that are paid for within themselves. They do charge a fee for what they do, and this is not something that comes necessarily out of the county budget. This is something that comes directly from fees that are being paid for their services.
Go ahead.
Will this result in an increase in fees?
One of the elements is the fees have not been addressed since 2009. We are out of the range for the other counties that do have weights and measures departments, and that's just a function of not having changed fees in 10 years. So it would be our recommendation as part of finance And I'll provide you with a schedule of those fees where it would be appropriate,
Yeah,
as well as for what else we're looking at.
I had a chance to talk to Mr. Dertinger, and I think a fair amount of some questions we might have we'll probably be able to pick up under the Finance Committee. I mean, I know this is personnel, but I know that he's got some second part to this.
How many people do this work?
Right now, the entirety of Northampton County is being covered by 2 gentlemen.
Wow.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
All those things that you mentioned.
Yes, that's kind of the point in all of this is, and you know, just to that extent, I mean, there's a gas station that, you know, just came to my attention last week that just hasn't had gas. So we haven't been able to check them to make sure that they're acting appropriately. And for that matter, our Director Sealer actually locked them down until they do get gas and until we can check to make sure that there's no chicanery here.
Yeah, I feel the job they do is amazing. Every store I go to, I look and I see the Northampton County seal for weights and measures on the registers, on everything. I don't know how they get it all done. I think they need more in the department, and I support this to full-time 100%. I know, what is it, last year or 2 years ago, the previous administration tried to get rid of our weights and measures, which was a totally crazy thing to do. And I think they provide a great service, and I'd like to see it grow with your future. So,
Any other questions?
make
No.
a motion to move forward.
Motion, second. Thank you very much. So moved.
Thank you, Charles.
And that will
Motion to
adjourn
adjourn.
the Personnel
Can I-
Committee.
before you do-
Not yet. Okay.
I just had one
Oh,
quick
I'm sorry.
question before
Go
we
ahead, sure.
adjourn. Ms. Kelly sent us.
Meeting.
Ms. Kelly sent us a couple of memos with some updates to some of the policies. I was wondering if she could just maybe brief us as to what those were. I think it was harassment or some.
Sure.
Yeah, what was that about and why was it done?
The 3 memos sent were the, what we call EEO policy, Equal Employment Opportunity Policy. This is basically a non-discrimination in employment policy. Things we're required to do under Title VII, which is a federal statute, not discriminate in any kind of employment decision like hiring, promotion, benefits that we provide, things like that. We also are probably required to make a statement that we do not discriminate under some of the federal funding that some of our Department of Human Service agencies receive, and I should probably mention that. The next policy that was updated, that was just updated to include non-discrimination against transgender individuals. So now we cover LGBTQ, lesbian, thank you,
Yes.
lesbian, gay, bisexual,
Transgender.
LGBT, transgender, and questioning. I
Queer.
think I've gotten everything.
I think it's, is it? Oh, okay. Question.
I have also heard that one, but, okay, thank you. That's the change
That
in
was
that
it. I
one. And
was one-
also, there was genetic engineering, or genetic identification, genetic material identification. This is not something, pardon me?
Gender fluidity.
Well, gender identity, but there's also a law that called GINA, G-I-N-A, Genetic Information Non-Disclosure Act, which prohibits us from asking about genetic traits that might make someone a bad risk for purposes of health insurance. I don't believe that the county ever had a problem with that, but I'm guessing some employers did, or the federal government would not have seen fit to enact a statute. So we added that because we're required by law. The Americans with Disabilities Act policy really has not changed much. It needed to be updated since the last amendments, so we did that. And we made some references in that policy, I believe, to our non-discrimination policy. But not many, you wouldn't see many changes in that Americans with Disabilities Act policy. The third policy is unlawful harassment, which includes sexual harassment as well as harassment on other, protected classes like race, gender, religion, ethnicity, national origin, things like that. That we also expanded to include LGBTQ individuals. And also added an appeal procedure because by law, it is required that we have a complaint procedure. We do an investigation, and that when we issue the outcome of what our investigation is to both the respondent and the complainant, we give them each an opportunity to file an appeal. So we've added that appeal procedure, just to comply with Title VII.
Okay. I was just wondering, because I was wondering if we weren't doing that or if the federal or state statutes had changed in that regard. So, no.
The question you might want to ask is, when was the last time we revised?
Yes, I think that may have been part of the problem.
Yeah.
Thank you
for
very
noticing,
much for
though,
the
Mr. Hughes.
excellent summary. Thank you. Okay, all right. With no other questions?
Moving to adjourn.
Okay, move to adjourn.
Second. I'm going to call to order the Finance Committee meeting immediately. I'm calling the motion, Finance Committee meeting to order. Yeah, you gave me one.
Sorry, did I give you that?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I know Miss. All right, relax. Calm down. Okay, I know Tara's time constrained because she has something. So I want to get going. Courtesy of the floor. Yes, sir. Could you please give your name and where you're from?
Good afternoon. My name is Douglas Dolan. I'm Executive Director of Delaware Canal 21, a nonprofit organization that is charged with looking at the entire 60-mile length of the Delaware Canal from its terminus here in Bristol to its genesis up here in Easton. So, and I'm here just to speak very quickly on a matter that's coming before you here, and that is the matter with the New England Power low-head power generation resolution. Our organization is endeavoring and working with Northampton County and Bucks County to look at new ways of thinking about the canal, new ways of looking at shaping its future going forward. And in doing so, we're looking at trying to think about 21st century solutions that will help us save that 19th century National Historic Landmark. Among the whole range of ideas that are on the table is the concept of low-head hydro generation power in the Delaware Canal. We're very excited and have been monitoring and listening, and as with the work that's being done and being proposed by the folks from New England Power, and we commend Northampton County for really the work you've done in terms of really grabbing this and taking a look at it as thinking out of the box. The proposal before you has budgetary ramifications because you're going to ask for matching funds for grants are being applied. And I can't comment specifically about those, but what I can say is that all great journeys begin with the first step, and this is the very important first step. We're looking at what you're going to experience here in the proposal you're doing here in terms of how it may be applicable and what we can learn from it through the other areas of the Delaware Canal, because we think it is a part of the mix. We think it is a way for, as you I'm sure have heard in presentations before you, to think about using our historic 19th century infrastructure in a way that allows it to have new life in the 21st century. And this is a particularly interesting one that pertains both to the Lehigh Canal and the Delaware and Lehigh Heritage Corridor, but also, I think, to the Delaware Canal. So thank you for the opportunity to come here. We strongly endorse the concept. We hope that you will continue to give it your thoughtful consideration, and I hope that will result in a positive recommendation for the grant application and the county's ability to support that grant application. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I would answer them, but otherwise, I've taken enough of your time.
Thank you for coming in. I know it was short notice since we really began presenting the resolution for the power. And I specifically asked for your guys' opinion. Obviously, I want to make sure that while we work, in conjunction with you, that another plan we're working on is not in opposition to, plans and objectives that you guys have. So
No, we are very much, and as of this past Saturday, our board was talking about it, and I think this is a very good testing, learning opportunity for all of us. So we're very interested, and we have lots of questions, and as their experience grows, we're going to try to work with them to see how it works forward. But I think it's definitely an idea that can work for all of our needs.
Anyone else?
Again,
Thank
you very much.
All right, next on the agenda is any more courtesy of the floor? Okay. Discussion regarding the approval of matching grant funds for New England Hydropower Company LLC project. We have a resolution. Mr. Barron, I see you're standing. I assume you want to talk.
If you have any questions, I'm here to answer them. The folks from New England Power are also here to answer them. The resolution before you, I think, is all-encompassing. That's all.
Yeah, we had this presentation, Mr. Heckman, and they came, and the Delaware Canal people, DC 21 came, and I think it's a great idea, and I think I commend the county executive for moving forward with it, and possibly Ms. Zirinsky had something to do with it too. So I'd like to make a recommendation, if there's any other questions on something that we beat to death for the last 4 months, to forward it to full council for tomorrow night.
All right. Anybody have any?
Just for Mr. Barron, 1.5 million. What budget line item is that coming out of? Certainly, it's not in the budget for this year.
It is not, and it will be in the 2019 budget. Okay. So part of what we wanted to do, the county executive, as part of his Green Northampton County, when this project came about, we realized it would be in the 2019 budget. And it's not fair to the governing body of Northampton County to sort of plop $1.5 million into their budget and say, with all the other challenges you have to face, and say, here you go. So we wanted to be as upfront about what we were looking to do for the 2019 budget. So it won't affect, we won't need any budget amendments for 18, which I think is what your question is getting to. And then in 19, there are funds that are sitting with the Northampton County GPA we're looking at, $500,000 with the Weller Center. There's some grant money that's sitting out there yet, with a possible mix of a small amount of county taxpayer money that we are going to be able to get to the $1.5 million.
Okay.
I think it's pertinent to clarify that this is a matching grant, that this is contingent on getting the $1.5 million from Pennsylvania as well. So if we don't get $1.5 million, we are not going to be held accountable to come up with $1.5 million. So the state gives us $250,000. That is what we contribute. So it's a matching grant up to $1.5 million.
And we are only a matching partner in that. Much like open space programs, farmland preservation.
Anybody else have any questions or concerns or issues? Do you want to make a motion, Ms. Zirinsky, to move it forward? Oh, I didn't hear him.
I'll second the
He
motion.
says
How
it
about
before
that?
we even talk about it.
I know,
so.
he's motioned.
All right, she'll second it. All right, so we'll talk about it then. Moved? Yeah. Tomorrow night? Yes. All right.
Thank you.
Okay. I told you we'd get it in time.
I know. I thought there was going to be like tons.
All right, now we're going to have a discussion regarding a fee increase, weights and measures division. And this is where I think Mr. Dertinger is going to shine.
Is this it?
Good evening. The fee increase, as well as everything else we're going to be talking about here today, as this is coming around, we have, there's been an exhaustive search looking around the surrounding counties that still maintain their departments of weights and measures. Unfortunately, that's become significantly less. Just back 20 or so years ago, there were 53 counties with departments of weights and measures. Today, there are 13 counties that still maintain their departments of weights and measures. In our section, we are in the Region 7, there are only 7 sealers which are handling everything from Philadelphia up through Lehigh County. That's a huge problem because a lot of things are not being addressed.
When you get a chance, we need one more.
Oh, there you go.
Never mind, somebody screwed up.
Thank you.
Our bad.
I gave you guys 11.
You were fine. We were in error.
So looking at the remaining counties that still operate, as well as looking across both the country and the rest of the Commonwealth, our fee services were significantly less than they should be. And to that extent, the numbers that you see in red are where we really should be, and certainly where we probably were in 2009 when these were last addressed. So we are recommending at this time and asking council to, by an ordinance, increase to these levels. Also at this time, we are, as many of you who previously voted on the budgets, but those of you who have not, we have been in the process of updating much of our equipment, but specifically our fuel measuring equipment. To this day, if you would have seen how John and Clint did their work, you would shake your head and think that we were operating a mom and pop shop. They had an insert that goes in the back of a pickup truck to do weights, to do their measuring of fuels, and then that fuel would then, by gravity, go back into whatever it was that they took it from. This is a time-consuming item, which is problematic for us, having these folks being tied up, but it's also problematic for the gas station owners or the folks who have the measured fuel vehicles. One of the machines that we are in the process of obtaining now does that actually by a pump, so that we don't have to take up as much time keeping businesses' trucks off the road, tying up lanes in gas stations. It helps us be more efficient with them and makes it less of an impact when we show up. The equipment that we had also included a trailer. So when the Department of Weights and Measures showed up, they came in with this ridiculous series of apparatus that are now out of date. And what we're going to do now is take up much less real estate when we show up. We'll be able to do it much quicker so that we're not affecting the business owners. And part of that is why this increase is also necessary. Because even with shopping this around and working this through, we have seen now that we have the new steel tariffs, we have seen an increase on the cost of this vehicle because almost everything is made of stainless steel. And with the steel tariffs being what they are, we've seen a huge bump on this machine. So that is one of the top reasons why we believe this should be done. This department still, at this point, is holding their own, but this would make certain that we would be paying for this vehicle as well.
You addressed that this service could be provided to other counties.
Well, that is part two, and that is something that since we had moved forward in updating our equipment and getting things that are appropriate and proper to the state standards, it got their attention because, again, I point out, there's only 13 counties that are still doing this. The state is very interested in maintaining that and supporting and helping wherever they can because they're not increasing the amount of people that they have doing sealers' jobs. There are presently 29 people in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania doing the job of a sealer. So that means for the rest of the Commonwealth that is not covered by the 13 counties, they only have 20, and they're coming out of Harrisburg. So whereas I was complaining about windshield time for our guys leaving Louisemore and going to Walnutport or to Easton, these folks are significantly more windshield time and doing much less work. The state has reached a point where they can't do it themselves, and they would be very happy if we would help them. And one of the things that they did ask us is Lehigh County had abandoned their program back in the 90s. And presently, according to their staffing numbers, they have a 1/2 person doing all of Lehigh County.
Meaning a half a a half, like a part-time
A
job?
part-time, less than a part-time
So
job.
one person performing a part-time job, or 1.5 jobs?
When they designate for the different counties, they designate a half-time
Oh.
person for Lehigh County,
Okay.
which clearly is not helping the situation. And very many of our consumers are also, many of our taxpayers are consumers there as well. And if you go around there, next time you're out, try and find a state seal on some of these things and check the date for which it's been sealed. There's a lot of this that's not there. They have been pursuing us eagerly because we are not just following this through, but we are improving the equipment that we have. And the staff that we have presently does a phenomenal job and has actually been recognized by them as someone that they really want to enter into further work with. So these fees schedule here would ensure that Northampton County taxpayers are neither paying for businesses, because this goes both ways. For as many places as you may go where you're not quite getting a gallon for a gallon, there are businesses that are selling more than a gallon for a gallon. Now, I've asked John several times if he could tell me where that was, but he assures me that they fix that once they tell him, so it's really not that helpful. But there are businesses that, as many businesses that were making money with their thumb on the scale, there are businesses that are losing money. So this is helpful to them as well to make sure that they're paying or charging a fair price.
Just real quick, do you know what these new rates will look like in the revenue for the budget?
We do.
Do you know what that is?
The difference in the rates from where we are now, we are presently at 221,000. This would bring us to 303,000.
I mean, this department pays for itself.
It does pay for itself, which is a very important part of that. But, you know, in looking at the increase for the vehicle, or
Right.
even, I mean, just to put in numbers so that you folks know, it's a $149,000 vehicle.
But the vehicle's been needed for years. I mean, we poo-pooed that a few years back, too, when they wanted to get a new one for some bizarre reason.
As it turns out, somewhere along the line, the past administration just kept giving them $25,000 a year, and as everyone
Say,
knows,
go buy
every
one.
3 years, that money falls off, so it never gets anything.
Yeah, it was amazing. I mean, I've seen them do their work at Wawa down the street once, and the way they do it, it'll be great. And then if we can get more measuring in other parts of the county or other parts of the state, because the state doesn't come anywhere. I think I was out making coffee when he probably brought that up, but you can't get a state person to do a seal anywhere. They claim they have people, but I've never seen one anywhere. So, I mean, this is good service that we provide, and like you said, for the owners too. If they're selling more than, like I told Hayden Phillips, more than a pound of bologna when they're getting their pound, you'd like to know that because they're just cheating themselves. So it's a great service that we provide, and it pays for itself. So,
and I agree with that. It's great that it pays for itself, and I think it should. My only concern is that actually it's becomes a revenue, that it's generating revenue as opposed to just covering its costs. I don't think what we charge on inspecting something shouldn't generate a profit for the county. I think that it should cover its costs, and if it's equipment needed, I agree with.
Right.
And that was my issue last time, was that they wanted to raise the rates, but they didn't have anything tied to it, and that's why because I support the program as it is now. I support having it, but I don't want to see it where we think, oh, this is a way to generate revenue. We're going to keep raising it, even though our costs are $200,000. We're going to generate $300,000.
yeah, well, we haven't raised our rates in 10 years, our fees, which is kind of ridiculous there also, and you're aligning with other counties that have this, right?
Well, we're aligning with other counties that have it, but again, we hadn't updated a lot of our equipment. So, as much as our revenue is based on 2009, a lot of our equipment is based on much earlier than that.
Yeah,
So, and
1975.
so that it continues to pay for itself, it looks like it may be generating revenue, but on the other side of that, if you start looking at the cost of the vehicle over that period of time that we're going to have to replace that vehicle.
Do you know the cost of that vehicle that you're looking at?
$149,000.
That's just the components on a truck? The truck is
That's the complete truck. That's a
That's
Ford
everything.
F-450, which we had purchased with monies that were given to us, $25,000 at a time. And again, thanks to the steel tariff issues, we're having a delay on that truck, so that chassis will not be here until such time as the next budget comes in.
Yeah, there is only one stainless steel shop in the United States of America anymore. It's in Freemansburg, Pennsylvania.
Well, this is
That's
Seraphin.
the whole country. Stainless steel tubing manufacturer.
It's a matter of not just the stainless steel, it's a lot of the measuring equipment that is very specific to this.
Mr. Werner.
Can I segue into something here that, and I'm all for Clinton, John. I rode with that truck they had up in Emmaus, okay? So I'm all for the, even if it costs $200,000, I'd be for the truck because I know what those guys do, okay? Here's my question. You have customers that have to, do these customers have to be notified that there's an increase coming?
It would go out with their regular letter.
Okay.
Every year, they receive their letter indicating that their application, their fee letter, their licensing fee is due, and it would come in just in the same way. There would most likely be a letter in advance to let them know that this would be increased, and then there would be the letter, their licensing letter to let them know that this was coming.
Yeah, that would be my first question, because not that these are overly extreme increases, but any increase in business today on anything, it gets questioned. So I just want to make sure that we're doing proper notification and when we do this. The second one, how are we going to implement that? How are we going to implement all that to all these local people? Do we have a group of people that are going to go around and ask questions, or are they?
I'm sorry, in what manner?
Sometimes clients will say they'll have a question about the meters, or I mean maybe it'll be to a municipality. And do we have someone that's going to be heading this, or will it be just John and Clinton taking care of the whole program?
As far as moving forward into Lehigh County?
Yeah.
That would be, it really winds up being the same thing. It's something from the Department of Agriculture, Division of Weights and Measures, will make them aware that through the MOU that would have to be signed, they would make them aware that the Northampton County Sealers would now be doing this. They would receive that same letter, and quite frankly, John does a great job when he shows up there explaining to them why he's there. And even for the folks, and there are folks who don't want their stuff checked. Those are the guys you worry about. But there are guys out there that don't want their stuff checked, and there is a mechanism for that as well. But it is John will be the person who will be doing most of that moving forward, and he's effectively. I mean, even in Northampton County, every once in a while, a gas station pops up, or something closes, or has fallen off, or we didn't notice, because every time, it's been much more sensible when John and Clint left to make a left turn. On the one day they make a right turn, they find something that they didn't see before, whether that be a place that has, that's selling things by the pound, or in some cases, in a lot of manufacturing cases, there's a number of elements of the manufacturing process that they check as well. So. Which is also why we added the load rack meter at the end of this, because that had not been addressed before.
Thank you.
Just one quick thing. I'm glad to see that we may be able to get reimbursement from the state to cover other counties. Unfortunately, everybody seems to forget here that we have counties to our north and south as well as our west. What is the possibility for maybe working with Monroe County specifically with regard to this?
Yeah, please. That is an excellent question for John.
Just buy more trucks, do every county. Make money. Monroe's huge.
Walter Remmer is Director of Weights and Measures for the state of Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
He has been after all the counties that have their own program for a number of years to step forward and to take on counties east, west, south of them. Monroe County approached us, or approached Jim Davis while Jim was still here, and I don't know the timetable of that. They asked how we did the fee system. They wanted something to be brought. I was only part-time at that time. I know Jim talked about it. When he left and I took over for Jim, he said, if Walt is still interested, pursue him on Lehigh County, find out what his intentions are. Walt came back to me and he says, great. He says, let's work together and see what you can do. they would not mind us, or I would not mind going to the north into Monroe or even Carvin County. That we have a lot of interest, how should I say, the gas station we closed down, their owner is from the Monroe County. He's got several gas stations up there. Walt would be interested in.
But wouldn't that be, excuse me, I mean, I think I have no problem with that. I mean, it sounds like a plan, except baby steps. I mean, Monroe County is commenting, Mr. Kraft, that's a big territory. And I mean, I'm thinking about manpower, I'm thinking about use of our equipment. I'm guessing as time goes on, this could, you'd be talking about some substantial.
Building a garage.
Well, what would the staff be?
Well, it's not going to be a P3 project. I mean, we have control of it. So that's, we're not P3ing this baby. But I mean, the thing is,
you have to start very slowly, and Lehigh County would be the first step. We need to get Lehigh County under our belt and get everything organized over there. I want to say, I think Jim Davis worked for the county some 27 years. And I've only been here 14 years, I think, part-time, full-time together. Jim taught me a lot, and he said, go slow, cross all your T's, dot all your I's, make sure everybody knows what you're doing. You've got to announce yourself to come in. Walt and the state would probably take care of that, and I believe the media would be helpful in that, in announcing that we would be over there. Mr. Cusack, to the surrounding state or counties, Bucks County has one of the best in the area. Delaware has their own. We would be looking to go to the west. If Monroe was interested and they wanted to start, we'd be glad to share the information. It wouldn't necessarily be us. It could be their own people. When they changed the law, I think that was 96, from shall have to may have, everybody says, great, we can save money. What Mr. Dertinger just said, the state is nowhere to be found really over in Lehigh County anymore. Frank Cramsey retired 2 years ago. They brought in what they thought was going to be a full-time person. He lasted 6 months, and he says, I can't stand the traffic. He says, he says, it's just too much. He's now up in somewhere in the western or the northeast corner of the state of Pennsylvania, working for the state. Mm-hmm. This is where the municipalities are. This is where the population is. This is where the protection needs to be made. We don't need to be called a dumping state that most manufacturers want to
this is county government. It's a service level of government. Now, some folks may say the state has it, but we all know in the real world that the state isn't keeping up with, as Mr. Dertinger was explaining. So, I mean, personally, yeah, of course, I like the fact that we are on top of weights and measures. So, you know, I'm in favor of it totally. I mean, as far as moving ahead and how we get and how we progress, and that's an ongoing issue. Is there any other questions,
I just
concerns,
have one.
Mr. McGee?
The compliance. I know sometimes they'll go in and they'll see that they're giving more away or less away. They weren't. So, are you going to look at the down the road, or maybe the review of, like, if they're repeat offenders? Is there a fine, or is there something?
Our concern is to make sure that they're doing what they should be doing.
Okay.
And if they have to correct, they have to take corrective action right away.
Okay.
So it's not a matter of being punitive as much as just ensuring that we're doing what we need to. In cases where people are not doing what they need to do, locks have been put on things, and
right.
They've been given.
So that's how they
ceases.
handle it.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
Well, to that extent, we do have an ordinance that we can offer you if you have to be entered tomorrow night.
Yes, I'm all for it. I am all for this. I don't like fee increases like Mr. Dietz does. Partner, we need him and it'll wash, it's a wash. I'm all for it. Yes.
Mr. Dertinger, do you have an ordinance ready? Very well.
Thank you, Mr.
How does the Finance Committee feel about having this ordinance for a first reading tomorrow night? Would you prefer to wait?
I don't have a problem if the clerk can get it to us, and
They're amazing back there.
I mean, we're not going to vote on it, obviously, so, I mean, I don't have a problem with it being read in for the vote, but if, I'm going to go with the committee on this. Do we have a Are you even on my committee?
I believe I am. I believe I put myself on every one of your committees.
I don't think you are. I think it's Mr. Werner, Mr. Kusick, Mr. Rinsky, and me. You're a very vocal part of.
If I were council president, I would frown on last-minute additions to the agenda.
That was all. That would.
But I am not. It is Mr. Kraft's prerogative now if he wants to.
Well, I'm just saying, I'll make a motion, or did you? He's not even part of it. I make a motion that we move it forward for tomorrow night's meeting. Is there a second to do that?
I'll second that.
Okay.
Mr. Kuzic.
All right. So, I guess based on the prerogative of Mr. Kraft, we will be reading your ordinance
All right,
tomorrow night.
And to that extent, do we have a collective nod from the Finance Committee to move forward with?
I think you have a tentative nod. Yes. Fine. If you want to take it as a collective nod, be my guest.
Very good.
Yeah, we've nodded. I agree. Yeah. All right. Huh? Is this Matt's? All right. The next item of on the agenda is discussion regarding the amending ordinance number 639-2018. And that was for Mr. Dietz. Do you still want to do it? All right. Well, go ahead. You got the floor.
Well, just, I mean, as I've spoke before, I think the overall part of the contractor agreement, I think is well, but it's the apprenticeship part that I disagree with, and I think that the verbiage of it, really excludes general mentoring and training programs, and it's very specific in the title of a Class A apprenticeship, in which very many contractors and construction sites and that in the county do not apply, and not because they don't train people or do things, but just because they don't have a Class A. And I think that unfortunately it would lead to a lot of jobs out of the county and a lot of jobs out of the state. And having spoken with many contractors, especially those in the slate belt area, which at least I know the administration, I don't know the council members have fought really to keep jobs there. I think a lot of them will be hurting. So that's why I would put forward the amendment to remove the apprenticeship portion of that contract.
So that paragraph, I mean, is that totally coming out, or what was
11, 12, 13, 14. Or 11.
I'm sorry. You're on top. Okay, well, all right, discussion.
I guess my question is directed towards our solicitor. There is litigation with regards to this at this time. So I guess my question is, should there be some sort of input from the solicitor's office were we to move ahead? I don't know. I do think it needs to be amended in that small way, but I want to make sure that this would satisfy the legal issue that we currently have before us.
If I can, I'm not on the committee, but I'd like to speak to it. I think Mr. McGee, not to speak for Mr. McGee, is already working on fixing this somehow in the future, and we are in a pending lawsuit, and I think it's premature. And I am totally against removing anything that regard to apprenticeship programs. Those contractors that came up here and spoke, I don't know how to put it nicely, but they didn't speak the truth. They are on jobs with this kind of same language in Delaware County, in Philadelphia County, and every other place that has it. They're actually working jobs with this. They have a Class A apprentice program. They belong to the ABC, and all of a sudden they're up in arms. So I'd like to just have you, I mean, you can put this in any time you want. I'm not on the committee, but I'd like to have you pull it for now, see what's going on with the lawsuit, see where we're going. You can always amend it. I mean, we may have to amend it from the lawsuit. We don't know. But right now, I am totally against changing anything until this thing sees itself through, or Mr. McGee sees it through, and however he plans on fixing or amending it himself to appease everybody, so everybody's happy.
Do you have anything you want
To counter what, yeah, just to counter, the administration right now, I think is handling it, and you know,
Well, we know it's
I
in
just,
litigation.
just looking at this though tonight to comment on your request here, and I am not on the finance committee either.
Feel free.
But you know, this removes a lot of the education piece, which the bill was designed for. We're moving into the future. We're not going in the past. And formal education is becoming more and more prevalent in today's day and age. And I just think a vote for this, this removal of all of this is unfair to our youth. It's unfair to our working families, to people graduating from high school that, you know, maybe college isn't a fit for them, so they go into the construction trade. Well, they need to have this education piece, and I think it's available to all the contractors. And I would certainly help any of them try to figure out a way to get an apprenticeship for their company. I'd do anything I could to help them out. So I just think a vote for this is a vote against the education piece, which was a lot of the part of how this ordinance was designed. And
well, if I may, just you know, so even your own words, you know, a apprenticeship program, but this is very specific in a Class A apprenticeship, so it voids a lot of mentoring. And listen, my oldest son, I haven't gone to CIT because I agree that you know I was not a traditional college student. He is not, and I think the hands-on skills, I think that they are going to be a very much in demand going forward. But I've spoken to a lot of contractors that don't per se qualify for a Class A apprenticeship, but they do mentoring, they do training, and a lot of the Class A, as I've spoken to them, and granted I don't know everything about it, but I've been, since this came out, I've done a lot of research on it. A lot of these contractors are very specific in what they do, and they don't qualify for a Class A apprenticeship because it's the journeyman trade, and it covers a lot of trades that they don't do to get it. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
I think they're blowing smoke up something, because every one of the building trades, every trade is represented, building trades and unions, and they all have apprentice programs for that specific thing. So
yeah,
I don't know.
All apprenticeship programs, but this is very
aircraft
specific, a Class
engineering or
A
something.
apprenticeship
I don't know
program.
what you're talking about. Working on a ship, we don't have any shipyards here. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Class A. That's what it is. The state is pushing apprenticeship programs right now, every day. If you go to Youth Advisory Council over there in Allentown that we're part of, they're pushing apprentices. The state's spending tons of money to start apprentice programs because the training is very important. We're losing the younger people that are trained to do these jobs, to build things for you, and they're not going in the fields. And the ones that do go in the fields, they get used up by these fly-by-night contractors and spit out. They work there for 3, 4, 5 years, never become anybody. They're kept on, oh, you're an apprentice. You're an apprentice doing this week. You're an apprentice doing that week. You need an actual class for these kids to get advanced, to know what they're doing, for having safety training, OSHA 10, OSHA 30, confined space, fall, all the stuff that's necessary to make a job. That we're talking jobs $250,000 and over. How much is it?
This really isn't going to affect a lot of the bread and butter work of the county.
I mean,
that's one of the reasons why I looked at the threshold prior to.
He lifted the threshold, but it's building something. You have to be building a building. You have to be doing some kind of, erecting steel like we did over on wherever that is with our human services building. You're going to a site and you're demoing something and putting it up again. It's not like we're painting bathrooms.
I want to ask you a question. I mean, you have
Go ahead.
I was actually going to ask if you'd come up. I know it's been a brief time, but you were on council for a long time. And this is the thing that I focus on, this amount of money. Have you seen, or in a way, that the 250,000 threshold, I understand where you're coming from. If I'm a small guy, if I got to come here, I feel like maybe I'm having pressure put on me. But is this really something that's going to affect, I mean, as Mr. Kraft said, these are big projects. We have to pay prevailing wage. So at the end of the day, I don't know what company is getting sort of banged on this.
It's you're in an unusual circumstance, and I suggest that you look to your solicitor for guidance with respect to the continuation of your debate with this particular ordinance and this particular committee hearing. You're the governing body of this county. You've been sued. You're in litigation. We have agreed with the court that we would maintain the status quo during the pendency of the litigation, even if a particular party may like the outcome of this particular ordinance. We are, I think, not abiding by the spirit of the order that the court entered, which would be to maintain the status quo until the litigation is going forward. And just as on a observational, not legal note, I don't believe anyone is helping themselves right now.
My position from the get-go is probably aligned somewhat with Mr. Cusick's. Considering that we're in a litigation, I would just like to put a lid on this, at least for the time being, because we may get directions from the court at some point. But I mean, that's my position.
I just want to say my original question was directed towards our solicitor. He's been sitting patiently. I'm hoping he can opine as to what course of action would be.
I am sensitized to your comments that there is litigation, and without weighing in the pros and the cons of amending or not amending, which is not my place, but it would seem prudent to me to put a lid on it, so to speak, pending the litigation.
What's your feelings about that?
Well, first of all, obviously, that's the consensus of the council, so I recognize that. But, part of my thing is if there was support of removing it and it was gone, in my view, the lawsuit would be gone and we'd save the taxpayers money in that fight altogether in general.
I don't know if I necessarily would agree with that. Go ahead, Mr.
I'm not that familiar with memory, but does that solve the lawsuit?
Would it not be dropped if the ordinance wasn't there?
I don't know, because I'm not the plaintiff.
See, we can't know that.
That's what I'm saying.
Which is the problem, and currently, it's our responsibility as the administration and what we're doing is defend a duly passed ordinance by the governing body. So that's our obligation at this point, and anything contrary to that, of course, is something that we are not supportive of.
Well, in the court, we're abiding by a court order to just do the status quo, so I think this should be, I would encourage my colleague to pull this and just sit on it until we find out what's going on. That's what I'm trying to say. It shouldn't even be on the agenda for you can bring it any time, I mean, anything you want, but I think we should just sit back and wait, not wait, but,
Well, that's fine.
So you're pulling it.
You want to just hold on it for now? Did you still want to ask any question?
I don't want to ask a question. I wanted to make a comment since I've patiently been sitting here all night. I'm not on the committee. I just think that I don't support pulling the apprenticeship, but I hear what your concern is about people in the county fearing that they will not have employment. And so I think depending on the outcome of the litigation, it would be important to do some education about what these are and how to start these. Because I think Bill is right, and I think people already have the beginnings of this. And there are plenty of people, I hear that it's union, not union. There are plenty of non-union companies that have Class A apprenticeships. So I think we have to remove the misperception that it's only a union contractor that can get this. And so I want to support the education, but not exclude people from the county from having jobs. That's all I wanted to say.
And if I may, and Mr. McClure knows this, the 80-20 that you call now the local labor, if it weren't called local labor, I wouldn't be shocked if that had been brought into court a long time ago. But I don't think there's somebody out there that wants to say I'm going against the local labor ordinance. And a lot of these things we don't know. We pass laws and then we find out through the courts if we can or can't do them. So this, since, as our solicitor said, and it's been brought up, we're in this, let's get a ruling. I mean,
if I may, since I am on the finance.
Yes, you are, Mr. Werner.
I would recommend and follow. Thank you. I would recommend what Mr. McClure said, and also I respect my colleague's opinion on that, but I think it's our obligation to follow what our solicitor says in the event that this lawsuit changes things. We can't do anything. We are paralyzed until this position is taking place. So.
All right. Well, Mr. Dietz said he's pulling it for now, so we'll close on that on this topic. Anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dietz. All right. Then we come up to the review of Article 13 contracts.
On shift.
Oh, boy. Okay, so I'm going to read these off. And, all right. The first one is On Shift Incorporated, 1621 Euclid Avenue, Suite 1500, Cleveland, Ohio. And it's for scheduling software renewal of licenses. It's a 36-month term, and it's $48,990 per year for a total expenditure of $146,970 for a 36-month term. And the Shift is the current electronic employee scheduling software utilized by Graysdale for both nursing and non-direct care personnel.
Yeah, I was here when we first brought this on. I think it's a good thing. It is sole source, so I would move that we recommend approval to full council tomorrow.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. I agree. Now we're going to go to the second one, which is King, Spry, Herman, is that Freund? Freund. Thank you, Freund. And Fall. And Montgomery, oh my goodness. And Montgomery, McCracken, Walker, and Rhodes. Is that the whole firm? Anyway, all right. It's with what I just said, and it's for outside legal counsel in general, 3-year term. Billing rates are included in the proposals, and there are proposals attached if you have looked at them or you wish to review them. The total amount of the award will be based on actual services provided by the vendors. The total spend for the 3-year term for both firms is not to exceed $250,000. Are these two firms? Are there any questions, discussion? Yes.
Mr. Heckman?
Yes.
As you know, I'm Liz Kelly, Director of
Yes,
Human
Ms.
Resources.
Kelly.
I was a member of the committee who helped draft the RFP for these services. And I guess I'm substituting for Melissa Rudis, the county solicitor, tonight, to tell you why the committee selected the two law firms that you just mentioned, King, Spry, Herman, Freund, and Fall, and Montgomery, McCracken, Walker, and Rhodes.
Thank you.
And I think there are actually
I noticed
way
that
more
after
than
I
that.
finished it. I thought it was the longest named law firm in Pennsylvania.
Yeah,
now.
you just might be right about that. They don't make it easy on you. There's currently an attorney working for the Montgomery McCracken firm who's already working with us. His name is William Kennedy, and he's in the middle of handling 2 cases that are active right now and doing a good job. I've spoken to Melissa about that. She's happy with his work. We're happy with the fact that he discounts their rate for us. And so that's basically one of the main reasons why he's no longer with the firm he used to be with and has joined Montgomery, McCracken, Walker, and Rhodes. So he and one of the other associates there submitted the response to our RFP, and our experience with him was a big factor in the selection of his firm. I can tell you that as a member of the committee. The other law firm, I want to be just honest and fully disclose that I was formerly employed by that firm. However, I have no financial interest in that firm, either previously or continuing. None whatsoever, so there's no financial conflict whatsoever. I get nothing for being on this committee from them. I just want to make that perfectly clear. But I do know their work, and they are a local firm, very responsive, very well experienced in handling public sector work. They have a number of departments. They're one of the bigger local firms, so they should be well positioned to provide attorneys to us. One of our part-time attorneys in the solicitor's office, Brian Taylor, is also an associate of that firm. I'm sure you've met Brian Taylor by now, but it was their proximity and location in Northampton County that we felt made them, as well as their skill and experience, that made them the best position to do any outside legal work that we may need.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. Mr. Kusick.
Just a couple comments and a question. We've had King Spry here before. They've done bond work and other things for the county, and I think they've done a good job. I think my question is, what specifically, and when we did that, we hired them specifically for that work. You answered why we would hire the other firm. Do you have any specific plans for King Spry at this time, or do we just need extra arms in the bullpen?
Well, I'm happy to report that at this point, there's nothing that I know of that's pending that we would need one of their members for. I know Kevin Reed is known for his bond work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I wasn't thinking of that. I was thinking more along the lines of, if we were to need an attorney to represent us in a labor arbitration case, it would be much more cost-effective to use a local attorney with experience, and they have some experienced attorneys in doing that, than it would be to use an attorney traveling from a longer distance. That's one thing I can think of. But no, I'm not aware of anything pending. I also think part of it is they're someone that would be called upon when the solicitor's office can't handle it for whatever reason. Maybe there's a conflict of interest or something, kind of like the reasons why Mr. Kennedy is handling the two cases that he's handling.
Yeah, I understand that, but like I said, I'm used to seeing a more specific. Like when we've hired them in the past, it's been for bond counsel and things like that.
We had broken out the two, the labor as well as just general counsel. At that time, that's when we started seeing the GPA lawyering up on the other side, and it was appropriate for us to make sure that should anything come that way beyond what we would be doing through the solicitor's office, that we were well positioned and that we didn't necessarily need to start putting out an RFP at that point. Wouldn't be a good time to do so.
So we needed extra arms in the bullpen.
Well, at this point, these aren't even necessarily in the bullpen. We just know that we can call them in from another team if we need them.
So this is in anticipation of what might occur.
This was to make sure that the county and the county taxpayers were protected in the event of anything. And not to do just one law firm, as has been done before, that we would have the best of labor representation and then the best of general representation, rather than just going to one law firm, which has been more traditionally the plan here, to hope that they can serve all of our problems. This provides more direct.
Would they, may I ask the question? All right. Would they be giving us input on, hypothetically, working with, as a GPA consultant?
Would they be giving
Would they be working as, with the county involved in the general purpose authority at all?
That was not the plan.
Okay.
Or not what we were considering at the time, so no.
Okay.
Are there any other questions regarding this?
Lengthy collection of names that are.
Yes, this procurement notice?
Where is their hourly? I don't see it.
I don't know if they have an hour. I was going through it, I didn't see an hour.
There was a figure it was given up to, not to not
Well,
exceed.
that up to would be.
So it doesn't, it's not.
So that we don't go over, yeah, that's, and again, not an anticipated, just, I believe that really came more from Catherine Anderson, who recommended that that's generally what the standard was, and then.
Wait,
but that's, the intention is not.
Excuse me, on page 14, Montgomery, its cost proposal, They said their standard hourly rates are $345 to $875 for partners. Yeah, 305 to 725 for counsel, and 300 to 465 for associates. So, if that's any help.
They said they're
It's
proposing
in-
20% discount.
Yeah. That's probably for repeat customers.
It says for county, they're proposing a significant discount of 20% off standard hourly rates.
Haven't we heard that before? Oh, no, for somebody else. I'm sorry. Anybody else have any? Mr. Kusick?
Just as a last
You still have the floor.
This would be in the solicitor's budget. It's already included. We don't need a budget amendment, or?
Yeah, there's no budget amendment, and this will be in the administration's budget.
Okay. Well, why wouldn't it come out of the solicitor's budget as part of the, I believe they have a line item for outside legal, right?
For 2018, that line item was utilized and used up. There is a provision in the administrative budget, or there is room in the administrative budget for this in case we need the funds for this year. And then in the future for 2019 and planning, we're going to figure out if it more resides in the solicitor's office or the director of administration, specifically because the director of administration has the larger budget. It also manages more of the staff and may have to make some of those decisions outside of the solicitor's office to use outside counsel.
Can I just piggyback?
That's odd.
And that you're not responsible for this. Was the amount put in for this year abnormally small? That's already been used up, or? I mean, you're saying that that line item is gone.
There is, to potentially sustain it, there was not a lot of money in the solicitor's budget for this year that we can't just add that money to the budget.
Oh, right. I just was curious. Never mind, that's fine. Thank you. No, it's fine. Any other questions on this for anybody, from anybody, committee or otherwise?
Well, as long as King Spry is willing to give that 20% discount, I'm okay.
So that wasn't.
No, I said, as long as King Spry is willing to give the 20% discount, I'm okay with things too.
Yeah, get them in a bidding war.
No, I just want to hear it. It's in their recommendations.
Are we getting that discount from both of them? That was the question I think you had.
From what I remember of the King Spry response, their rates were significantly lower than the Montgomery McCracken rates, and I believe they also said that if they were to take on litigation, they would agree to take it at, they're used to the insurance carriers dictating what the rate will be, basically. And they said they would be willing to work for what the insurance carriers will.
I know we have a fair amount of squires in our administration now, so I'm confident.
Ms. Ruda shared her thinking with me on this subject. She is, and Ms. Kelly told you this, and it's true. Ms. Ruda is very impressed with the work that Mr. Kennedy is doing for the county and the cases that he has. And Mr. Montgomery McCracken Walker and Rhodes is a Philadelphia firm that charges Philadelphia rates, and thus to be competitive in our market, the 20% discount is appropriate. And my guess is, and I don't want to speak for King Spry because I don't know what their rates are. My guess is even with the 20% Montgomery McCracken discount, King Spry's rates are still lower than that.
Okay. It's not defined in the paperwork, but we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
let me just clarify. You got the full contract in your packet in the memo, and it does have a cost proposal in it.
It's in the memo?
Yeah,
Okay.
for
All
some
right.
reason it wasn't put into this
All
because we
right.
kind of
I'll go back and read it.
combined it a little bit. We took out all the resumes
Thank
and
you.
stuff.
I appreciate that.
Okay. So do we want to move this forward? A motion from anybody?
Motion to move it to tomorrow with a recommendation.
Okay. It's moved and seconded. I agree. So that goes to the side. And now, review of controllers' audit reports. Mr. Zaborski is here. And he's been very patiently sitting back there, ready to give us the inside information on county government.
I have 4 items reports to review with you. Now, since you have the full reports in your packet, I will just summarize these. The first one is the statement of indebtedness. This is an audit of the long-term debt. And this is done every year as required by the Home Rule Charter. And these numbers are noted in the general purpose financial statements. Any questions on that one?
Yeah, go ahead. If
Yeah,
anybody
just
has any
one. We're going to
questions.
finish up paying off one of the 2003 lease rental this year. Is that accurate?
I believe so. Yes.
There's a bond that we're going to have paid off completely sometime this year that's under the 2003 lease rental debt. Am I accurate when I? Correct. Okay. Are there any bonds that are potentially have the ability to be refinanced at this time that you're aware of as part of this?
Steve.
You want to answer that now?
Sure. Well.
So there are changes to the Municipal Finance Act that changes the way you can refinance. The only way you can refinance a bond at this time is if a bond is callable, which we do have a callable issue in 2019. But the county executive is developing a plan for some of the long-term planning of the county. So we will have a plan to present to you along with the 2019 budget, probably a little bit before that, to talk about how we're going to handle all of those issues, including that I believe it's a $5 million remaining bond that the county has out there that's callable.
Okay. That's what I want to know. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or concerns on this particular report? All right, let's move on then.
The next one was the county's cash collection process in the law library. This is done every 4 years. We review the cash collection work, and we found that the segregation of duties provides for adequate controls. We then select a sample of 5 receipts. There were no receipts noted since June 29th of 2016. No further work was performed. And then the final procedure was determined if bank reconciliations are done monthly, and if the balance agrees with the IFAS, we select a sample of 5 disbursements. We found that the bank reconciliations are done monthly and reviewed by a superior. The account balance agrees with IFAS, and there was only one distribution of $15.24 noted in the last 3 years.
Okay.
It's a busy one there, and that library is busy.
Well, we know somebody who sits down there a lot, so.
The next one was the next one was Northampton County Offender Supervision Fee Program. This is done every year, and basically this is the review of the Act 35 funds, which can be found on page 3 of the report. In our opinion, based on the audit, we find that the fee program is in conformity with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States.
Okay.
Okay. And then
Any questions, concerns? All right.
the last one is a audit follow-up to the P-card program audit that was issued September the 29th of 2017. At that time, we made 6 recommendations. The first recommendation was to review the P-card purchases. And the P-card administrator reviews transactions 2 days before the end of the billing cycle to ensure sign-offs by cardholders, supervisory approval, and receipts have been uploaded to the Works platform. Since correction action is being taken, no further follow-up is planned. Then the next recommendation was the supervisory approval in Works. We found that the corrective action is being taken. The Controller's Office provides Procurement with a monthly listing of employee terminations in an effort to keep the active listing current and up to date. Additional follow-up will be performed in 6 months. Next recommendation was the purchase of gift cards. The recommendation was that the administration establish a policy regarding the cards, and Elizabeth Kelly, the HR director, is in the process of doing that. Audit follow-up will be done in 6 months. Next recommendation was updating the procurement card manual. Manual has been updated and correction action was taken and no further action is planned. The next recommendation was review of county staff travel and staff training policies. Elizabeth Kelly has agreed to review the policies set forth in the manual. Additional follow-up will be performed in 6 months. And then finally, a review of fiscal limits. The manual was updated in November of 2017 to reflect the new fiscal limits. Since corrective action was taken, no further follow-up is planned. That concludes the board
I just had a
reports.
quick question.
Go ahead.
Probably, I don't know, Mr. Zaborski, but maybe Ms. Kelly. Are you comfortable moving forward now with the gift cards and the procurement cards? I mean, you're putting together your own policies on.
I'm not comfortable at all with the number of P cards that are issued in
Yeah, it seemed
the
like
county,
it's blossomed over the last few years.
Or the number of cell phones. I've been trying to get a handle on it over these first 6 months.
Mm-hmm.
I may need 2 or 3 terms and I jest, but with respect to the P cards, for example, Mr. Heckman, you probably remember this. When I asked the question, why does so-and-so need a P card? And it's at least facially obvious to me why they do not. I get back 6 different, very important sounding bureaucratic reasons.
Yeah, I don't know what the time frame was on that, Mr. McClure, but I know at one time you really had to go through the hoops to use a procurement card because only a supervisor. It seemed like all of a sudden a lot of P cards were floating around.
Right, and here's the problem in trying to manage it. This is a large operation, and we'll take weights and measures for example. Mr. Keppel's constantly buying this or that at Harbor Freight to keep his truck from falling apart, as he's moving from gas station to gas station. So, I mean, it's very difficult to rein that in. But I know Ms. Kelly, when she has enough time, she'll do her best to attempt to perfect a policy that protects the county.
Ms. Kelly's going to be the go-to person
Yeah.
for that.
Yes, she is.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Any questions, other questions, concerns, issues, Zaborski, or anyone else? We have a motion to move this forward.
Motion to, there is no moving forward, it's just a report.
Recommendation. Yeah, okay. Oh, there's nothing. I'm sorry. It's getting long. Now, what we're going to do is, next month for the meeting, the long-awaited financial statement, Mr. Kusick and I have been talking about, will be on the agenda. I'm just saying that now, so anybody that's curious, we're going to do it. And we're going to adjourn, except we're going to take 5 minutes before we start the next meeting, because I immediately started mine, and it's a couple people in a couple minutes. So, movement for adjournment? So moved. Second. We're all out of here. Thank you. We're done with peace and
I'm
love.
stuck to my
Peace
seat
and
and I
love.
can never move again.
They put a bathroom.
If I do, I can't get up.
Guys,
So